Good afternoon. Did you have a good lunch? Okay. My name is Jean Encinas Franco. I teach at the Department of Political Science, University of the Philippines here in Diliman. I'm very happy and honored that I'm a moderator for this session, and thank you for the UP Korea Research Center for inviting me once again. So for our first discussant, we have someone who will present to us a paper titled Navigating Migration and Faith, Examining the Role of Religion Among Christian Migrants in Angeles City. We have with us Mr. Joseph Dizon from Westfields International School. So, Mr. Dizon, you have the floor.
Hello, good afternoon. I think before I start my presentation, since I am the first speaker this afternoon, I'll take the opportunity to thank the UPKRC for organizing this event, and of course the very famous Ma'am Jean for moderating this event. Actually, the title of my presentation is Navigating Migration and Faith, Examining the Role of Religion Among Korean Christian Migrants. But let me put forward the caveat that this is an ongoing project. So later on, probably after everybody delivered their presentation, I'll more than happy to take your comments. By the way, I have to mention also that I think in relation to my presentation, it's equally important to mention the first Korean saint actually did his ministry in Bukawi, Bulacan, just a neighboring province because I live in Pampanga. So just recently, in terms of proximity, we're really very close. So my presentation today is actually an intersection between religion and migration, which I think is one of the fascinating topics in the era of globalization. Now let me begin my presentation. So can we, okay, I can simply, okay. Actually, I have to mention that Korean migration has emerged as a significant phenomenon in Southeast Asia over the past 3 decades. The movement of Koreans into the region began in earnest during the 1990s, largely driven by South Korea's expanding economic investments abroad. In response to this growing presence, several higher educational institutions in the Philippines established Korean studies program to better understand the evolving bilateral relations between the two nations. By early 2000s, with assistance from Korea Foundation, many universities deepened these programs, signaling an increasing Filipino interest not only in Korean diplomacy and economy, but also in the broader cultural phenomenon of the Korean Wave. While the next slide. While Metro Manila might seem the natural center for such migration, Korean settlement patterns in the Philippines have been remarkably dispersed. Data from the University of the Philippines, CIFAL, indicates that Korean migrants are found across the country's 3 major island groups, Notably, Cebu has emerged as the province with the highest concentration of Korean residents, followed by the National Capital Region and then Pampanga. Pampanga in particular has seen a striking rise in Korean migration within Pampanga, Angeles City, an autonomous city with a dynamic cultural economy, has become a focal point for Korean settlement. By 2017, official figures recorded 8,816 Korean residents in Angeles City alone. However, estimates from the Korean Association in Central Luzon suggest that by more recent counts, this number has grown substantially, reaching approximately 15,000 Korean migrants. This growth highlights Angeles City as one of the major Korean hubs outside traditional migrant centers like Metro Manila and Cebu. Several factors contribute to Angeles City's attractiveness for Korean migrants. Economic opportunities, educational institutions catering to Koreans, and relatively affordable cost of living compared to Seoul or Busan certainly play a role. Yet another vital, often overlooked factor is the establishment of religious communities. Since around 2008, numerous Korean missionaries have settled in Angeles City, establishing churches and religious networks that provide both spiritual guidance and strong sense of community for new migrants. This research paper centers on the Korean Christian migrant community in Angeles City. It particularly seeks to examine how religion intersects with migration experiences, how religious institutions act as spaces that mitigate feelings of alienation and foster a sense of belonging among Korean migrants. In a foreign environment where linguistic, cultural, and social barriers might otherwise lead to isolation, religious communities become critical in sustaining migrant identity and well-being. Thus, this study aims to shed light not only on the patterns of Korean migration, but also on the profound role that faith and communal worship play in the migrants' adaptation and integration into Philippine society. So let me just take a look at some. So this picture is taken in Angeles City. So this is called Friendship Highway. So you can see what majority of the Koreans actually settled. Now I just want to look into some of the related literature to better understand Korean migration, religion, globalization. In the context of an ongoing globalization and modernization, an important question arises. Where does religion stand in today's rapidly changing world? More specifically, what role does religion continue to play in public and communal life amidst increasing mobility and cultural transformation? Scholars across the globe have long grappled with this question. For instance, Herring discusses how globalization and religion are increasingly entwined, giving rise to the concept of homogenization as theorized by Friedman. According to Friedman, globalization tends to diminish cultural diversity, pressing local cultures into a more standardized global mold. This theoretical lens proves particularly insightful when examining contemporary phenomena such as transnational migration, which has reshaped demographic and cultural landscape worldwide. Migration, while opening opportunities for economic advancement and personal growth, often leaves migrants grappling with issues of identity, belonging, and alienation. Haber notes that Filipino migrants in Japan have turned to religious groups as cultural mechanism for emotional support, helping to overcome pessimism and adjust to their host society. Similarly, Asuncion 2010 emphasized how the Catholic Church in France functions not just as a religious institution, but also a social and cultural refuge that upholds migrants' aspirations, providing empowerment in a foreign land. Even in the United States, immigrants' communities likewise find in religious institutions a sanctuary where cultural ties are preserved and social networks are formed, allowing them to weather the challenges of displacement. Okay. The Korean Wave, which gained unstoppable momentum in the late 20th and early 21st century, has not only popularized Korean pop culture globally, but also accompanied a notable rise in Korean migration, particularly to Southeast Asia. In the Philippines, this migration trend became evident as early as the 1990s, leading to the establishment of numerous Korean organizations. In fact, by 2002, Korean nationals comprised the majority of foreign students in the Philippines, many drawn by affordable and quality English language education. As migration intensified, Ariol observed that Korean communities have become increasingly visible across the country's three major islands, namely Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, with notable concentration outside Metro Manila. In this migration journey, religion played a vital role. Kim underscores that for many Korean migrants, Christianity offered not only merely spiritual comfort, but a robust support system that facilitated adaptation in a foreign environment. The case of Angeles City, Pampanga in particular, as early data revealed, the city housed over 8,800 Korean migrants in 2017. Recent estimates by Korean Association Central Luzon place the number closer to 15,000. The growth of this community is not merely a demographic trend, but also reflects how religious networks have been instrumental in making Angeles City a desirable destination for Korean migrants. Korean Christian missionaries who began settling in the city as early as 2008 created religious spaces that now serve both spiritual and social functions, mitigating alienation and fostering communal bonds, particularly in the Philippines where Christianity or Catholicism is very strong. I'll probably skip the other part so that I can move on to the local level. So the Korean diaspora in the Philippines unfolds in multiple layers that merit closer examination. While much scholarly attention has been paid to Korean migration, these studies often approach the subject from a national perspective. Yet, migration's effects at the local level remain underexplored, a gap that this study addresses by focusing specifically on Korean Christian migrants in Angeles City, Pampanga. The influx of Korean migrants in Angeles City intensified around 2008, as I mentioned earlier, coinciding with the city's rapid economic expansion, which created opportunities attractive to entrepreneurial migrants. Between 2002 and 2017, the number of Korean residing in the city rose significantly, totaling to 8,816 migrants. Among these, 6,344 held working visa, 2,199 obtained special study permits, and 273 possessed special working permits, figuring that reflect a diversification of migrant purposes from economic pursuit to education. The education sector in particular serves as a compelling window into this migration. Data from where I teach, Westwoods International School in Angeles, show that Korean students now comprise the largest segment of their international student population. This trend reinforces earlier findings that Koreans make up majority of foreign students across the Philippines. One student, Shin Dong-jung, candidly reflected on his family's migration decision. She said, and I quote, my parents decided that our family should migrate to the Philippines primarily because of education, especially to obtain fluency in English. It is false to say that we cannot learn English in Korea. There are many academies, but it is undeniable that there is a better educational environment here because English is more widely used. Shin's statement illustrates a broader reality. Language acquisition, particularly English proficiency, remains a primary driver for Korean migration. However, migration for education is often embedded with larger familial strategy, involving not just students but parents, relatives, and sometimes community-appointed guardians. In response to this continued movement, Korean religious leaders initiated programs to help migrants adapt to their new environment. One notable example is in Friendship, a neighborhood in Angeles City that has become a hub for Korean settlers. She will recall that our family Our family migrated to the Philippines in 2012. However, my dad moved first for business reasons and later for our education. In our subdivision, there are many other Koreans with whom I have grown up. As you'll experience highlights, business and education are intertwined factors driving Korean migration. In fact, Korean businesses in Angeles City created approximately 6,570 jobs for Filipinos by 2017, a number that has continued to grow, underscoring the significant economic footprint of Korean community. Okay, there. Am I supposed to get there? Okay. I think I have to be very quick because I only have 5 minutes left. This model of migration wherein one parent remains in Korea for economic reasons while the rest of the family relocates abroad is a common pattern among Korean migrants globally. Yet some families like that of Shin Dong-ju have chosen a different path. Let me just move on to the religious aspect so that we can maximize the time. Religion as a social institution functions not merely as a set of beliefs or practices, but as a community framework through which individuals develop shared values, emotional attachments, and social solidarity. These shared practices serve as practical guidelines for navigating both the familiar and unfamiliar, a role that becomes especially pronounced among migrants facing the dislocation of resettlement. For many migrants, religion offers a buffer against alienation, sustaining a sense of belonging in otherwise unfamiliar environment. Built on principles of inclusivity and collective identity, religion remains a resilient institution crucial for migrants' emotional and social integration. In fact, among Korean Christian migrants in Angeles City, the role of religion emerged as a critical adaptation mechanism. As Shin will share, my religion helps me adjust here in Angeles City since a great percentage of people in the Philippines are Catholics. My religion particularly allowed me to not feel distant from my friends in terms of religion since most of them are Catholics who are followers of Jesus Christ. Also, as Christmas is one of the biggest celebrations in the country, I, as a foreigner, can still celebrate together as a Christian. You'll experience that common religious tradition, even across denominational lines, can serve as bridges between migrants and host communities. The shared Christian ethos between Catholic majority Filipinos and Protestant Korean migrants provides a cultural point of resonance, mitigating feelings of foreignness and reinforcing a sense of inclusion. Moreover, Korean-led Christian churches in Angeles City play an active civic role, engaging in outreach programs that not only assist vulnerable Filipino communities, but also provide migrants with structured opportunities for socialization, volunteerism, and skill development. As Shin Dong-ju recalled, my religion actively engages in different social activities, and one of them is a community service program. I think it is also observed in other Christian churches, but from what I observed in my church, it initiates outreach programs at least once a year. I have been attending these programs and I learned that everyone is different, but we still help each other wholeheartedly no matter the circumstances. I also develop essential skills like communication skills, empathy, and social skills. Dongju's testimony suggests that religious involvement not only supports moral and spiritual growth, but also fosters pragmatic social skills essential for successful integration. Participation in structured, church-led community service projects provides an avenue for Korean migrants to engage with local realities, while simultaneously building social capital with their new environment. There is a consensus among Korean migrants in Angeles City that formal affiliation with religious institutions aids their adjustment. Religious participation offers more than spiritual comfort. It embeds migrants in networks that expose them to local services, gospel readings, homilies, and worship songs in the Korean language, creating a cultural microcosm that preserves their native identity even as they navigate life abroad. This dual engagement, maintaining Korean traditions while participating in Filipino society, reflects a flexible, adaptive role that religion plays in migrant life today. Sarah Kim's reflection underscores this. She said, moving to the Philippines, I did not know anyone, but joining a religion helped me find new friends that made me feel that I belonged and appreciated. In our church, they are all happy and kind compared to school. In fact, I consider my friends in the church as members of my family. Every time I sing worship songs in Korean with them, I feel that there is something bigger than oneself. I can say that my experience in the church really helped me adjust in the Philippines. Since I only have 2 minutes, maybe we can go to the conclusions. Okay. The Korean diaspora in the Philippines remains a multi-layered phenomenon with significant dimensions yet to be fully mapped and understood. These unexamined aspects are critical not only for enriching academic discourse, but also for providing a sound base for policymaking that can strengthen bilateral relations between South Korea and the Philippines. This study has sought to foreground the narratives of Korean migrants residing beyond the metropolitan center of Manila, particularly in Angeles City, thereby offering a non-conventional perspective on migration by highlighting the crucial intersection between religion and migrant experience. While national studies often generalize Korean migration as primarily economic, the localized focus of this research reveals a more nuanced reality. Religion emerged as an indispensable social institution that enables Korean migrants to cope with the psychological, social, and cultural demands of resettlement. As documented, Korean missionaries began arriving in Angeles City as early as 2008, not only for economic opportunities, but to offer spiritual support to fellow migrants navigating the challenges of displacement. With the Korean-led churches, the deliberate use of the Korean language in all aspects of worship, including liturgy and music, serves as a cultural anchor, allowing migrants to maintain a tangible connection to their homeland while adjusting to their new environment. And that's where I will end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph Dizon, for that very enlightening presentation. And as you can see, since we're now in the 10th Korean Studies Symposium, I've attended past Korean Studies Symposium, and I could sense that before, the presentations were really at the national level, Korean-Philippine relations, or why Koreans are coming to the Philippines, or interrogating certain groups of Koreans coming to the Philippines, like students, entrepreneurs. But then I'm seeing, based on the 2 presentations for this panel, I'm seeing a different take, and it's producing localized knowledge, which I think is very, very important in the journey of an academic field, which is, in this case, Korean studies. No? I'm sure you are all raring to ask questions, but then we will proceed first with the next presentation. We will have more time since we only have 2 presentations for this session. So our next presenter will deliver his paper on Korean influence in the Kapampangan foodscape in Angeles City. Please don't make us hungry. We have with us Ms. Charlene Manese from Universidad de Sevilla.
Good afternoon in Kapampangan. I'm Charlene from Angeles City, and my presentation is about local food scheme. This is my first Korean-related study, which is still ongoing, but this is actually part of my advocacy of understanding Pampanga's local history and culture. And we are all aware how Korean cuisine and food products have become accessible, which is why some of the things discussed here are somehow familiar and relatable. This phenomenon is attributed to Korea's cultural products which have influenced our palate and consumption of foods. However, the main objective is to contextualize the Korean influence on the local foodscape in Angeles City, which requires historical and cultural analysis of the place and its people. I'll go straight to the case of Angeles City since previous presenters had already discussed some aspects of migration and Hali in the Philippines. It is known to many that Kapampangans or the people of Pampanga are known for their cuisine. Hence, the province is packaged as a culinary destination. That is why when Senate Bill number 2797 declaring Pampanga as the culinary capital of the Philippines was vetoed, though unanimously approved by legislators, it became a trending topic. The identity of the Kapampangans is strongly associated with gastronomy, which may give the impression of a traditionalist character. However, the gastronomic scene in Pampanga can be described as cosmopolitan and dynamic. In fact, it is home to many Korean food establishments. So hence, this study aims to analyze the city's historical background and condition, including the Kapampangan's characteristics that enabled Koreans to enter the local food scene, and examine the impact of Korean influence on the local food scene. And it deals with questions such as how did Koreans manage to penetrate the Kapampangan foodscape, what factors attracted Kapampangan's Korean food and other products, and how did Korean and local gastronomy coexist and contribute to one another. This study applies the concept of foodscape proposed by sociologists Johnston and Bowman, which according to them is a dynamic social construction that relates food to places, people, meanings, and material processes. And it involves economic and social implications, dynamic relationships between food culture, and food, mediation of cultural understandings of food, and active and creative agents. To understand this, it is important to discuss first the historical and cultural background of Angeles City. So among the towns of Pampanga, it is the first to achieve cityhood on January 1, 1964, by virtue of Republic Act number 3700, until it was declared highly urbanized on October 13, 1986, making it politically independent from the provincial government. So its proximity to Clark Air Base contributed to its economic growth, which was built on foreign migration. The basis agreement in the 1940s between the U.S. and the Philippines led to the presence of American soldiers in Angeles City. This resulted in the establishment of businesses related to entertainment. I don't need to elaborate on that, the wholesome and the not so wholesome. And then, so when the continuity of the basis agreement was rejected by the Senate in 1991, the U.S. military facilities were later converted into premier economic growth centers. One is the Clark Air Base, now the Clark Freeport and Economic Zone, which is home to many BPOs, manufacturing companies, hotels, casinos, and restaurants. Now with foreigners as investors, migrants, and tourists, the economy of Angeles continued to flourish as culinary and leisure destination. It is also crucial in the promotion of Pampanga as a culinary destination with the many food establishments and hotels in the city. So among the oldest food centers in Angeles are the Nepo Center, located downtown, and Barangay Balibago, where the infamous red light district is located. So it is easy to find food establishments within Pampanga, from the humble carinderia to fine dining restaurants. Even in the foothills of Mount Arayat, cafes are actually sprouting. In Angeles City, the food hubs are continuously increasing and expanding. There is a growing food center in Pulong Marabul, Actually, they're close to one another. Okay? Pasensya na lang dun sa mga in-circle ko. No? But if you go there, no, you will find out na they're well connected with one another. So there's a growing food center in Barangay Kulong Marabul, which is near the City Hall, Angeles Interchange, Barangay Balibago and Clark, and of course, along Friendship Highway, where the Koreatown is located. So the Filipino-American Friendship Highway is a national road traversing the cities of Angeles and San Fernando in Pampanga. It is bounded by the Clark perimeter fence on the Angeles end and MacArthur Highway on the San Fernando side. Cape Town is located along the barangays of Anunas, Amsik, Putput, and Pampanga. Koreatown is the name ascribed to the area in Angeles City where most Korean business establishments are found. It spans around 6 kilometers from Friendship Gate to Angeles City Porac intersection. It is said that around 50,000 Koreans are residing in the city. So these are the Filipino Friendship Korean markers. Okay, when the Wang Pinatubo erupted in 1991 and the exit of the U.S. military in the Philippines, which happened in 1992, contributed to the fall of real estate prices. Around this period, South Koreans began purchasing inexpensive land within the entertainment district of Angeles. And as mentioned by my friend, Mr. Joseph Dizon, the Korean influx was felt around 2008 with the entry of missionaries and entrepreneurs. And in 2012, the concentration of business establishments became more evident. The growth of Cape Town extends not only along Friendship Highway but also within its vicinities. Okay, let me just move forward. There are mostly pictures na po. Anyway, there are around, these are the number, well, you can show the chart and okay. These are the number of registered business establishments along Friendship Highway from 2019 to 2024. It isn't easy to ascertain which are owned by the Koreans since the businesses are registered to Filipinos and some business names are not Korean sounding. So, these are some of the establishments along Friendship Highway. And, the station, as you can see, is very Korean there. Now, the city maintains a good relationship with Koreans. In 2005, it sealed a sister cityhood pact with Hamgyong County. And in 2012, City Resolution number 6511 was passed, declaring every third week of October as Filipino-Korean Friendship Week. Now, with the strong presence of the Koreans, this led to the establishment, of course, of their businesses. More residential subdivisions also opened within the vicinity. This created foot traffic in the area and more locally owned businesses were also open. But how come Koreans flock to Angeles City? First, it is near the Clark Freeport Economic Zone. It is accessible through major thoroughfares such as NLEX and SCTEX, and it is also not far from the National Capital Region. It is also accessible by air. Actually, daily flights to South Korea are now available at Clark International Airport. Now let's proceed to the Kapampangan food scene. As mentioned, it is dynamic and cosmopolitan, wherein local and foreign cuisines actually coexist. Though sisig is commonly found in many restaurants, the case is not the same for other Kapampangan dishes. Some are actually seasonal, according to the availability of ingredients. Among these are the famous Kapampangan dishes such as betute, made of frogs, and tamaru, mold crickets, which were products of Kapampangan's resourcefulness. They were able to turn humble and exotic ingredients into sumptuous dishes. On the other hand, other dishes require long process of preparation. While Pampanga often uses its signature dishes to promote the province as culinary destination, the manner of cooking, regardless of the type of cuisine, makes the food industry flourish. Further, foreign influence is not something new. As mentioned, the city's economy was built and continuously sustained by foreign presence. The menus of most long-standing local restaurants in the city are not exclusive to signature Kapampangan dishes. Old-time restaurants serve Chinese food, while others serve a hodgepodge of local and foreign dishes. With the city's long history with the Americans, U.S. products were very accessible, even before malls and membership shopping stores were constructed. The village of Tau in Mabalacat, which is also near Clark, and Nepo Mart were once famous for their PX goods, or import-restricted goods from U.S. military bases. In the 90s, even when Pampanga was still experiencing the aftermath of the 1991 Mount Pinatubo eruption, shopping in duty-free shops in Clark became a fad. The spending power and the attitude of Kapampangans attracted more duty-free shops to open. Most stores even offer free shuttle rides from Clark mainly. Although their popularity eventually waned due to the influx of Chinese goods and later because of changes in tax exemption privileges, the consumption of foreign products did not stop as they ultimately became accessible in groceries and shopping centers outside Clark. Malls and membership shopping stores also made local and foreign products more accessible. Now, for the Korean influence, it isn't always about Hallyu. While it remains a strong factor, K-Town actually started with unknown brands. Some establishments only use Hangul, which is not comprehensible to the locals. Eventually, more businesses began using Korean-related names such as Kim and Park. Establishing businesses with names related to Korea that were popularized by Hallyu and famous chains only followed later. Okay. So, for example, Jubong Restaurant. I don't know if you still... the young people, I don't know if they're aware of this. Right? So, after the famous historical drama aired on GMA7 in 2007, as South Korea's capital, some businesses included Seoul in their business names. And later on, more associated with Hallyu. For example, Gangnam, Busan, Itaewon, Myeongdong, Kakao, etc. Okay, so their presence also changed the physical features of establishments. Aesthetically appealing and spacious interiors were constructed by Koreans. For example, Lala Garden, I don't know if you've heard about it, is said to be the largest cafe in the Philippines. Okay, so. And then the entry of famous Korean houses also became notable in K-Town and other parts of the provinces such as Tom and Tom's, Coffee Bay, and Bates Coffee. Okay. With this, local entrepreneurs also constructed aesthetically appealing and spacious establishments. Other established businesses featuring Korean dishes such as Samji restaurants. Even at home, Korean dishes became part of festivities and cravings for many Kapampangans and even many Filipinos. The preparation of Korean dishes and consumption of commercial food products became more accessible with the establishment of Korean grocery stores within K-Town and other areas in the province. I think there are more Korean grocery stores than local groceries. I mean, K-Town's only 6 kilometers, but you can find many Korean grocery stores. Now, even seasoned Kapampangan food establishments began incorporating some Korean dishes in their menus. Okay, and on the other hand, some Korean restaurants offered local dishes or fusion of Filipino and Korean cuisines. Now, still, the question, what made Kapampangans embrace Nansik and food products? Well, Kapampangans are not only good cooks but also restless and fierce foodies. Okay? Just don't believe the Kapampangan food lovers. Most of the time they don't tell the truth. Okay? They are active consumers and patrons of the food industry. While they boast of their signature dishes, they also explore different flavors that they can consume and emulate. As a foodie, eating is not about hunger and nutrition. It is a form of leisure, relaxation, and experience. This makes them even more critical of the food that they consume and their dining experience. While Kapampangan's preference for local dishes remains, this can be different when dining out for leisure. They can be critical of local cuisines when dining out. As cooks themselves, it is inevitable to compare the quality and price of local food served in restaurants with what they prepare by themselves or by their family members. One would compare the sisig that they ordered with what they or their relatives would cook. It also must be considered that cooking is not confined to females. Males are also good cooks. So that makes Kapampangans even more critical in the food that they consume and purchase. Okay? So, in short, when we go out, we prefer to look for something new because we are already enjoying good Kapampangan dishes at home. So we want to try something else. Okay? So while Hallyu remains, of course, behind the influx and consumption of products, the continuous support of Kapampangan's Hansik and Korean products relies on the quality of food served and whatever suits their palates. While Kapampangans are curious foodies, often wanting to try new restaurants and coffee shops that are aesthetic and spacious, they will not stop patronizing them if the quality and the dining experiences are not unsatisfactory to their discriminating tastes. However, as a cook, the Kapampangan can also emulate Korean dishes, particularly with the accessibility of ingredients in Korean shops and even local grocery stores. Some prepare them for personal consumption, while others prepare them for their business. And then further, Kapampangans are known to be lavish. This is not exclusive to their manner of dressing, but also in how they prepare their food and their willingness to spend on local good food and dining experiences. That's why Kapampangans are often branded as mayabang or show-off. So I mean, when it comes to business, it's very important to consider the spending power of the locals because I think the case of the Americans and Koreans it is different because now Kapampangans are the consumers, unlike before during the time of the U.S. military bases. It was the Kapampangans who opened businesses to address the loneliness of the Americans. So anyway, for the conclusion, more than Hallyu, the condition of Angeles City and Kapampangan gastronomic culture paved the way for integrating Korean cuisine and other trends into the local foodscape. Hansik is not a passing phase, but it is already a part of the dynamic Kapampangan foodscape, with the increasing number of Koreans in the city and acculturation of the Kapampangans. The Korean food establishments added to the cosmopolitan and competitive character of dining and leisure in Angeles City. It also influenced the dining experience regarding food presentation, architecture, and interior design of food establishments. So basically, that's it po. Maraming salamat. And these are the sources for the photos and the main references. Maraming salamat.
Naku, maraming salamat, Charlene, for that very interesting, thought-provoking, and it really made me hungry presentation. I think what the two presenters discussed today, as I've said earlier, give us somehow a new perspective in looking at Korean studies, in the sense that they're both producing localized knowledge, which will further expand Korean studies in the Philippines. We now see the impact of Korean migration to the Philippines as not only creating an impact at the national level, but also at the local level, where Koreans stay and build their communities. No? May we call the two presenters as we ask our participants to ask questions. What will happen is that I will ask 3 questions. I will get questions from 3 participants, and then I'll ask each of them to respond. Okay. Anyone? Sige, while you're thinking, sure. Yeah, please.
Maybe she needs microphone. Should I give the microphone?
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much for your fascinating presentation. I'd like to ask one question to Mr. Dizon. I also interviewed some missionaries in Angeles City and Baguio, Manila as well. And I also, I totally agree with what you find in your presentation. But on the other hand, from my perspective, there is the church Christianity can be a social capital, not for adapting in the Philippine society, but also it can be a social capital for migrating itself. Because when I interview some people, they get the visa for missionaries to migrate for the Philippines. So they got the missionary visa to let their son or their granddaughter
Stay here.
educate English in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So did you find any other cases as same as I found?
Sorry, Joseph.
Hello. I think the microphone is broken.
Ask for, tanong lang ako.
Okay, sige ba, sure.
So before I let them respond to the question, are there anyone else who wish to ask a question? Yes, Prof. Manuel.
Hi, good afternoon. This is for Charlene. And based on the, recent presentations about, the influence in other places here in the Philippines. So, I think it was Hannah who mentioned that there's a Korean community in Iloilo, and Iloilo is also known for its food. So, do you think, what we learned about Angeles and Pampanga and the Kapampangan cuisine can also be something that the Ilonggos or the other regional hubs of cuisines and food, is something that we can, they can also learn from the experience of Angeles and the Kapampangan cuisine.
Thanks, Prof. Manuel. Anyone else? I need one more question before I ask them to respond. Yes. Prof. Chavez.
Because I took a look. But I just want to ask about, just maybe you can share for the both of the 4 presenters, are there any issues about you documenting the topics that you're researching? Because typically, for example, for the different establishments, they usually have records on how many Korean establishments there are, but we usually don't get information about why they closed. So we usually get how they started and how they're going, but towards the end, why do they choose to close their business, or why do they choose to go out of the country? So those questions usually I want to ask about something that is usually pagdating sa mga industry. So, ayun.
Okay, so we have questions about closure of Korean businesses, we have a question on visa missionaries, and then Iloilo City as a food hub in the Philippines. You have the floor now?
You want to start? Okay. Yeah, because currently I'm teaching at Westwoods International School, where majority of our students are Koreans. Yeah, that's why I can easily, I have quite, in a way, an access to them. Yeah, I have some students whose parents are missionaries, but I think a more interesting thing sometimes is actually their attitude. It does not resonate with the father. You know what I mean? And if you're a missionary, you're supposed to espouse good values. And then when you talk to their children, it's totally different. So sometimes I even tell them, your parents are missionaries, and you, I think it's a more interesting thing. The lineage, you know what I mean? The lineage, I think there's a disconnect. Because if you're expected to, if you're the father, you're the missionary, you're expected to profess something about Jesus and to be kind. You know, but it's totally different when you talk to their children. So I think that's a more interesting thing that needs to be investigated too. Now, in terms of lineage, how do we continue the lineage? You know, if you're the one if you're the proponent of something, yet your own children do not follow what you say or what you preach, I think there is really something that needs to be, it needs further investigation really. So to answer the question in a very brief and concise manner, yes, I did meet some of them, but the more, I think the bigger question is, in terms of their lineage, the ideological lineage, are we able to, were they able to continue the lineage? I think that's something that I think needs to be investigated. Yeah, I hope I answered the question.
I think there are
another
question on difficulties in documenting. Why they
Yeah, actually, I think both of us, we encountered this problem. Well, I mentioned earlier that I have, some connections with Koreans because majority of my students are Koreans. But at the same time, one of the main problems that the both of us encountered when we started gathering the data, some of them are very aloof in sharing their thoughts, particularly old Koreans, who are very conservative, and sometimes if you don't belong to the same nationality, they tend to alienate you. So that's one of the major challenges that I really encounter. Well, and then to answer the question, why are they migrating? I think it has really something to do with business and even the education. And then like what Ma'am mentioned earlier, the missionary follows, bringing the spiritual needs by their people. Actually, I have to mention something very important. Just recently, I think 2 weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago or a week ago? So there was this incident at Angeles City. So there were two Korean visitors here in the Philippines, and one of them was shot dead. He was gunned down in Angeles City. And then a day after that, or 3 or 4 days after that, because like what I said, 15,000 residents or Korean migrants, not all of them are residents in Angeles City. That's a big number. That's why earlier when one of the presenters mentioned that when they bargain, with the local government, they sometimes listen, right? The local government. In fact, when that happened, the mayor immediately ordered the police they were given 2 days to address the problem. Now, why am I saying this one? I'm saying this because when a day after that incident happened, when I had my class with my Korean students, they started asking me about that. And then they're saying that their parents are now starting to entertain the idea that they are probably leaving the Philippines because the Philippines is slowly becoming unsafe for them. And that's a very unfortunate incident. That is why 3 days or 4 days ago, we've seen this viral video on social media. You see Korean migrants, launching, they were walking and then giving out their flowers. And then, it's a form of solidarity that you can see. Even it has a religious aspect too. But that's a very, very unfortunate thing now. So I think that's one of the challenges that we are currently facing, because they're slowly leaving the country because of the bad image that sometimes we set also. So I think the government, Ma'am Jean, right? I think we need to make a policy that that addresses this problem on the local level. That's a very unfortunate incident.
For the problems, mentioned na niya, no, yung language barrier. And in terms of data regarding business establishments, since they are not registered under Korean names or Korean companies, okay, so it's hard to determine. Okay, so actually, I got a list of all the businesses along Friendship Highway, but I am familiar with the many business establishments in K-Town because we always go there. Pero you can, in the list, you can't even see them. So yun yung mahirap. Plus the city, I don't think, no. Pero we've tried. They don't have a study of the trade and investment programs in the city. So that's yun yung problem doon. And as for in the context naman of yung food establishments, as to why some are closing, the answer is very basic. If hindi masarap, the locals will not patronize it. Because I'm not exaggerating. If you know, Kapampangans, they're very fierce when it comes to, they're fierce foodies actually. Okay? We don't eat because of hunger, you know. So we are very picky and we are very choosy when it comes to these things. Okay, so you can attract us with unlimited rice or walang ganon, no? And at times you get attracted, for example, sa mga aesthetic cafes and restaurants, no? Pero if if hindi masarap, after that wala na. Okay, so in the context of restaurant, ganun lang kasimple. Okay, and same with the case of local food establishments din. Okay, pero yung good thing about the presence of the Koreans, kumbaga, nag-change yung thing sa food industry. Because I think for the past years, no, yung mga Kapampangas, they became too lax. Yung, basta masarap ito, pupuntahan. Pero ngayon, di ba, even the architecture, the space, they're already considering it. Okay, so yun yung yun yung maganda, kumbaga. As for the Iloilo case, I think kami dapat yata yung dapat matuto from the Iloilo case because diba they got this title UNESCO gastronomic city. Okay, so and it's not just about the taste of the dishes but also many cultural aspects involved. Okay, so I feel na yun nga, no, being cosmopolitan is not that good. Okay, kasi the thing, I don't know, no, I haven't studied the case of Iloilo, pero I think one of the criteria for getting that title in UNESCO Gastronomic City, the culture has to be intact but accessible to foreigners, something like that. Okay, but in the case of Angeles, we grew up with with many foreign things. Okay? So for mga products like Heinz, Spam, I mean they're very common even when I was still a child. Okay? Because of the PX goods accessible, in the EcoMart and the so I think that's it po. It's us who should learn from you.
Sure. Yes.
In relation to what Ma'am Shirley mentioned about what are the difficulties, I think one of the major problems that we are currently encountering is that it's really difficult to capture the exact number of Korean businesses in Angeles City. I think this is not just an isolated case. Because I remember when I had a conversation with some of our parents, Korean parents, and we asked them about their business, and normally, on paper, owned by Filipinos. But in reality, owned by Koreans. I think because there's this certain policies regarding that. 60-40. So that's one major challenge really. I mean, we can't really capture the exact number on the basis na they're trying to circumvent the law, if I may say.
It's not only that Koreans do that. All foreign businessmen do that here in the Philippines actually because of the restrictions on ownership of businesses. Yeah. We have a new set of questions. Yeah, we have.
Before that, add ko lang yung about still Iloilo. Actually, in Angeles, we don't have beautiful, we don't have natural tourism sites.
Yeah.
Kaya nga, yung panagan namin, and it's all about the food and leisure industry. So, unlike Iloilo, they have beautiful spots. Pero us, most of them are man-made, yung nga, casino, resorts, and of course the in-house red light district.
Okay, so did we have your question, please?
Yes, so this question is for Ms. Charlene. So I found this bit in your presentation that is really interesting for me in case of accommodation and adaptation. For example, Filipino restaurants offering Korean food, and then Korean restaurants offering Filipino food like tapsilog and stuff like that. So I was wondering if beyond that, have you found examples of like Korean restaurants adapting to the Filipino palate, or are they like really proud that this is authentic Korean? So is there like a conscious modification to accommodate to the Filipino audience?
Actually, the one that I showed.
I'll just get more questions. Anyone else who wish to ask questions?
Half comment and half question, and you can respond to this. Because earlier, just now, you responded to the question from Mark. I think we cannot really say the data is, it's because of lack of data or because of lack of language barrier. Because if you really want to identify Korean businesses, Korean enterprises, there are certain ways. And then in Friendship Highway, it's not really occupied by Korean per se, because it used to be American, used to be Japanese, and then now Korea took over. But if you check out the Central Luzon Korean Community Association, they also have a list of registered business, but not everyone is registered because, let's say, the franchise shops, they could be run by Filipinos. So I think you can really verify and you can really identify what data is really clear. Because we cannot really say, oh, this is because of lack of data, etc., right? And then I also have a question to Charlene. Like Lala Cafe attracts more outsiders. It's not just Kapampangan, right? Because it became like a tourist spot. Yeah. So how do you really relate the new enterprises with foodies and the Kapampangan culture and other things? Because there should be stronger connection. We cannot really say Pampanga is the food capital. So I think there can be some more discussions.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, can you respond please?
About the Korean restaurants naman. A while ago, the Tapsi House is actually owned by a Korean, Joseph's student. Okay, so yun nga na they offer tapsido and fusion of Korean and Filipino dishes. And there's also this one big Korean restaurant offering kare-kare.
My question is beyond that, kasi that's a very like overt accommodation of Filipino food. Yung small modifications in terms of cooking Korean food. For example, it's too spicy, so they're trying to modify because Filipinos are not, known to be tolerate spicy food that much. So, like, is there an effort na what's the more common choice? Is it we're proud to offer authentic Korean food, or they actually consciously modify their recipe para to be acceptable to the Filipino audience?
Well, from what I observed, they modify it to suit the general taste of Filipinos because we're not too fond of very spicy food. Okay, and then I think from the list of dishes that I've seen, only few. For example, the typical actually. What else? Kimchi rice, and then galbi. No, pero I haven't tried in French in Korea. Yes, no? So I don't know the difference. Pero anyway, also they adjusted din kasi yung flavor when we were in Korea because they know we're foreigners. So I think that's also the case in Angeles. Okay, pero anyway, as mentioned a while ago, Kapampangans they also love to try cooking dishes, so they could modify it based on their preferences, something like that. Okay, so yun nga, that's also one strategy din kasi to adapt.
May I comment on that? I think there is a conscious effort to modify. So one example, so when we had our dinner there, and then my Korean student approached me after saying, "Oh, teacher, how is it?" Because I asked them, "Who are your target market?" Filipinos. That's why Aussie Vlog but owned by Koreans, but on the side you have kimchi also. So there's still an infusion of Korean culture there. So to answer the question, is there a conscious effort? Yes, there is. By asking question to Filipino friends, there is a conscious effort on their end to modify it, to make sure that they cater to their target audience. Kasi ang target audience, according to them, are really Filipinos, not really more of Koreans. Because they own two restaurants, one Filipino, one Korean. So the Korean, it caters for Koreans. And then for the Filipino Osilog, it caters to Koreans, although it has a touch of Korean in it. Why? Because on the side, you have kimchi. So it's an invention. I think that's the reason why Korean, that's why I always tell my students, we can always learn from Koreans in terms of running their business. There's always a conscious effort on their end to adjust. Unlike Filipinos, if it's a Korean, it's a authentic Kapampangan, this is how sisig, no mayonnaise, no mayonnaise. We will find it in that sisig has no mayonnaise.
Di ba dinakdakan na?
Yeah, that's why dinakdakan na kapag may mayonnaise. Pero for Koreans, for us, it's still like this. I think we can learn from them. We can learn a lot from the Koreans. I mean, the way they set their minds, ang galing. So I think.
I think you still have to answer the question of Leah regarding the
lack of sources.
Yes, of businesses. Charlie, go ahead.
Okay, yun nga, about the lack of sources. Primarily, it's difficult to determine kasi and some which ones are Koreans because there are times na there's this restaurant, Korean sounding, pero you'll find out na it's owned by a Filipino. Yun nga, as mentioned a while ago, even Filipinos themselves, they're already establishing Korean-themed businesses. So that but anyway, when in terms of Korean influence in foodscape, we can already say that the mere fact that many Kapampangans and even other Filipinos are creating their Korean-themed businesses, we can already say it already penetrated the local foodscape na po.
Okay. Thank you. But may I ask the last batch of questions? This is also a half comment and half set of questions. Joseph, in your paper on linking religion and belongingness, I think we already also saw that in Mi Jin Lee's book titled Free Food for Millionaires, the Korean-American writer, no? But so it's really the case for Koreans in all parts of the world. But then I think if you're going to write your paper, in the conclusion part, maybe that's something that you can say that maybe in the future there are studies that can compare the experiences of Korean migrants in in different parts of the world in terms of belongingness relating to religion. And then the other thing is, for the two of you, perhaps it's also, I mean, I don't know why Koreans decided to settle in Angeles, and I think Charlene, you mentioned in your presentation that they were there a few years after the bases were taken out, no, by the Americans. Does it have anything to do with the fact that Korean businessmen are familiar with bases, since they also have an experience having military bases in Korea? That's one. And then the other comment, and this is a comment. If you plan to turn your paper into publication someday, maybe you can also add in the methodology portion, your positionality as researchers. Like, for instance, Joseph, you mentioned that you got your respondents from your students and other people who you meet because you're a teacher in Westfield High. Then that's something that you can also say, no? And then I understand, Charlene, since you were referring to we when you were talking, so you are a Kapampangan. Then that's something that you can also add in your methodology so that the reader will appreciate where you are coming from. And also, with regard to data, you also said that there are a number of Koreans who own land. I think it's also not possible because it's illegal. So I don't know how you can sort of tweak that statement to say that they don't necessarily own, maybe they're married to a Filipino or something like that. Then with regard to Kapampangan having businesses, I mean, I think it's very different during the time when Americans were in the bases and the businesses that sprung up, mainly because at that time there were no liberalized laws in the Philippines. No, the laws on liberalization were not yet approved, so that we were exposed to Hollywood. So the industries that have sprung up during the time that the U.S. bases were here were really imported goods, second-hand appliances from the houses of the U.S. bases military personnel, unlike now where we are also exposed to Korean drama, Korean culture. So that's why it also sprung up in Angeles City and in other parts of the country where there are lots of Koreans. So that's all. This, I think, if you want to respond to my question very briefly.
Because it's already
okay. So, maybe we can just talk about it later. So, thank you so much for this very insightful and interesting question. We will have our certificates. So, may I call on our two presenters? The UP Korea Research Center is proud to present the Certificate of Appreciation to Joseph Dizon for presenting his paper entitled Navigating Migration and Faith, Examining the Role of Religion Among Korean Christian Migrants in Angeles City at the 2025-10 Philippine Korean Studies Symposium, A Decade of Korean Studies in the Philippines, A Glance at the Past, A Gaze at the Present, A Glimpse of the Future, held at UP Diliman, Quezon City, Philippines, awarded on the 29th of April, 2025. So we have another one. We will give this Certificate of Appreciation. I will no longer mention the text. To the KRC is proudly presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Ms. Charlene Manese for her paper presentation.